What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video today. Inside this one, we're going to be talking about Jokic win another MVP. Should he win another MVP? Is the real question here. If you want my personal opinion, I'm going to be a little biased here, but I feel like he deserved his first two. I think you could obviously make arguments for other people, but I think he was the most deserving, in my opinion. And this year, I think he is also the most deserving this year. I don't. He's done way more with less. He's okay. Let's go over first. Let's go over the first MVP. So first MVP back in 2021, correct? He was coming off an amazing season, coming off a third seed with his team, just beating the Clippers the year prior in the playoffs, so make it to the Western Conference Finals. And they got bounced out in the second round. By the Phoenix Suns. Jamal Murray went down with an injury. Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon played like garbage. And Jokic, he didn't play his best basketball, but he was definitely not lacking, in my opinion. So I feel like the only person you could have argued that would win it that year would probably have been Steph Curry for me personally. I felt like Joel Embiid missed too many games. Even though his team was amazing, I feel like he did miss too many games for me to give him the MVP personally. Steph Curry, the only reason I didn't argue him was because he was an 8th seed, but at the same time didn't really have the wins to back it up. You'll see in a second why I say that. Because the second MVP, right? Jokic was a 6th seed. And the only reason why I give him the nod over Embiid is because they were only 3 games behind the 76ers, which were I think a 3rd seed or maybe a 2nd seed. But even then, the West was stacked. They were stacked. They were definitely more stacked than they were this year. And I just feel that Jokic's team being that bad and him making them a 6 seed, but they were still a 48-win team. Like that's a difference. Steph Curry's team, if we really look at it, wasn't winning as many games as Jokic's team. And it wasn't close. So that's the reason why I think it matters. I don't really context seeding. I context wins. Because you could be a six seed in the West, right? And still have like 45 wins where somebody in the East, right, could be, and this is vice versa. I'm just making an example because I feel like in the beginning of the year that was actually the opposite. I feel like the East was actually better. But okay, perfect example. Philadelphia this year, I feel like had around the same was a lower record than the Nuggets, right? But you could argue that they were just as good of a team, if not a better team. You could argue that because of how the competition is in the West. It was very lackluster up until the trade deadline. So you got to understand. I feel like it's more about the situation and the wins that you have more than the seeding. I don't think the seeding matters because right now, especially in the West, 13 through the 6th seed is all still open. So I that's another reason why I don't really consider seeding. Because if we did, then someone with the 13th seed could have an amazing year and they could still have 35, 40 wins. But it's just a lot of stuff like that personally bothers me. But I just think Jokic was I think the definition of most valuable player was Jokic, because where would they really be at without him at the helm? You know what I'm saying? They would probably be a bottom 5 team, maybe even the worst team, because they were really bad. They were really, really bad. And then because like I get most people probably won't be analytical people. I'm really not either. But with Jokic, I feel like they really equivalent to wins. There'll be some guys that like have these outlandish stats that don't really contribute to anything. The only 2 exceptions I've seen in a while are obviously Westbrook and Jokic. I feel like these guys were advanced stat aholics. They were always on them. You know what I'm saying? They were always leading those advanced metrics. But I feel like these actually contribute to wins, and at the end of the day, I just think we're gonna see what this video is about. And I feel like the case for the MVP is kind of set in stone unless they fall to like the second or third seed. I feel like it's Jokic's. It's as close as a unanimous MVP to me than it being close. I don't understand. People are trying to make it close to have a conversation. It's not close. It's really not. If Jokic keeps us first seed, it'll give a big middle finger to everybody. He just got to prove it in the playoffs. So, other than that, let's get into Young Mustard's video. Shout out Young Mustard for this video. Gonna be a lot of fun. Let's get into it.
Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Mustard is back with another video, and we are here to talk about some MVP convo in the NBA and why some people are so mad about Nikola Jokic potentially winning 3.
Oh, and one more thing before this video gets up. I understand why people will get mad, okay? Especially Philadelphia fans, that Joel Embiid has lost 2 times. I understand why you would feel like your candidate deserves to win. There were definitely a case for him. But I want to challenge this. Joel Embiid on that Nuggets team, where are they ending up? Probably lower than Jokic. That's my personal opinion. I feel like Jokic definitely equivalates to more wins, and we'll see how that ends up. I feel like if they don't hit at least the Western Conference Finals, there'll be louder noise on Jokic, and he definitely won't win a 4th MVP if that's the case. If he wins a ring, there's definitely a chance of that 4th MVP happening if he has an amazing year. So, I don't know. I think it depends on what happens to him in the postseason. I feel like a lot of people are going to put a lot of pressure on him to win a ring, and I think he has the most to prove this season. So, if not, there's only 2 people. It's him or Kevin Durant. So, let's see. Let's see what's going on.
Not 1, 2, but 3 straight MVPs in a row. Regular season MVPs. Keep that in mind because we're going to get to that in a second. If you didn't see the All-Star draft, then I don't blame you because the All-Star game these days, they aren't that exciting. But if you did...
are we going off the fact that he was the second to last drafted? Come on now. Come on now. You know why. It's because he's not really the all-star type of player. He doesn't play like in the all-star game. You know what I'm saying? He plays in the all-star game, but he's not like one of those people that goes out and dunks on people and shoots threes from 40 feet. He's not that type of player. So, yeah, of course he's not really going to be picked like a Steph Curry or a LeBron James or anybody like that.
Didn't see, Nikola Jokic was drafted second to last right before Lauri Markkanen among the starters, obviously. It was a pretty funny moment. Jokic saw that it was between him and Lauri to be the last pick among the starters, and he just walked to LeBron and said, hey man, don't do me like that. Come on man, pick me. that was pretty funny. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I love Jokic, but that was pretty tough that he was about to be the last pick. Who knows? Maybe LeBron would have picked Lauri. I really doubt it, but hey, who really knows, right? Nonetheless, though, with that, it sparked another conversation about if Jokic deserves this MVP award, which
if you're basing it off an all-star game, get the hell out of here, bro. Because if that's the case, then you can go watch my last video and see that Larry Bird is the best 3-point shooter just because he won a 3-point all-star game. Shout out to Magdal Russo. That'll be in the link. That'll be tagged on this video.
I feel like we've had this conversation each and every single time he's won an MVP. They did it the first time, the second time, and they're doing it again this year. And with that being said, I just want to talk about this award and why I think a lot of people have an issue with it and why they shouldn't, but I understand why. You feel me? There's a lot of hypocrisy around this award. But before we go any further, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It seems like a lot of stuff, but it literally takes you less than 2 minutes. Go ahead and do that down below. And speaking of down below, in the description box down below, you'll see the link for my social media. The @ are on the screen: Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, all of that fun jazz. Make sure you go and follow me. But without further ado, let's get back to the subject of discussion and talk about Jokic maybe winning 3 straight MVPs, bruh. Now, before I get really deep into this convo, let me just start off by saying I do not hate Nikola Jokic. Jokic. I just think that there are certain standards that are given to him that aren't given to other players in the NBA, good
I'm gonna
and
hear him
bad for
out.
his case. And what I mean by that is when you look at the MVP award throughout NBA history, there's always been an underlying criteria but never a straightforward one because it can change from year to year. But for the most part, it's given to the best player on one of the top teams in either conference. They're putting up great numbers and they obviously have a huge impact on winning. Now, in certain years, there can be outliers like we saw Russell Westbrook when he won the MVP as a 6th seed in the
I think though, with the Russell Westbrook them being an outlier, him and Jokic are the two exceptions of that outlier to me, to where the seeding, right? I feel like they were just so narrative driven because you got to think about it. What Westbrook left Durant, I mean Durant left Westbrook, and he was so like he had a lot to prove, and he proved it. I feel like Jokic is the same way. People didn't think he won his first MVP fairly, so he had to come out and do the same thing. I don't think it's nearly to the extent of what Russell Westbrook what he had to do, but at the same time, I do think in that time, those two are both the most valuable players to their team, to where it didn't sacrifice a record or a winning, or it didn't sacrifice their individual stats. So I feel like it was a perfect balance between these two, to where these outliers don't really become outliers. They do really fit in there. It's just the seeding. But I want to look at Russell Westbrook's record because I think it was in the 40s. I really do. But well, let's keep watching the video.
Western Conference, but he had the numbers and he also had a narrative on his side. Now, I don't think narrative really should matter in these conversations, and for the most part, I don't think it's like the biggest thing in these MVP convos, but it can help your case. In the case of Westbrook, when he won in 2017 as a 6th seed in the West, which was an outlier season, not only was he averaging a triple-double for the first time since the 60s, where Oscar Robertson did it only one time. It was something that we thought we'd never see again, and it came from a player who had just lost his co-star in KD and was seen as one of the most beloved stars in the league at the time, of course. Now, Westbrook would then go on to make the triple-double kind of like an everyday thing in the league, but at the end of the day, Russell Westbrook at the time, that was something that we thought it was never going to happen again.
I think having a triple-double in a game is normalized, but to the extent that Jokic and Westbrook did it to, I don't think that is normalized. I feel like just because Westbrook does it doesn't mean that other players are doing it. I think you're kind of missing the point, because, or you're making a point that's not very strong, at least, because Jokic, right? He does not just these like 10, 12, and 11, right? He does fucking 20. What was his last stats? It was like 24, 18, and 13. That's not normalized. And that's 2K stats, bro. I think you're getting it misconstrued by games to averaging it a whole season. That's the difference.
Like, people always saw guys like LeBron, Jason Kidd put up good triple doubles here and there, and a lot of them in regular seasons. But Westbrook came along and made averaging a triple double a norm. He did it for 3 straight seasons. Then later in his career, after he didn't do it in Houston, he went to Washington and did it there. I mean, he truly made a triple-double clockwork in the NBA. And because of that, many people look back at his MVP season and say, yeah, it was great, but why did we give him the MVP over Harden, who was a 3rd seed in the West and was only like a couple of rebounds off?
Yeah, I understand that case, and it's definitely narrative driven, and I would probably give it to James Harden looking back at it, because I think, yeah, he was only like a couple rebounds from having it or whatever, maybe an assist away, which I think we should do with Jokic as well anyway. Rounding it up, you know what I'm saying? Like, dude has 9.5 assists. Give him the 10, bro. Really, we're gonna do that to James Harden. I feel like if he really did have that triple double stat line, it would have been a unanimous MVP. But for James Harden, maybe not a unanimous MVP, but it would have been a way farther in James Harden's favor.
from doing it himself. Now you insert somebody like Nikola Jokic, who sure, he's averaging a triple-double this year, but I don't even think that that's the big deal of his season this year, because let's be real here. Yes, the triple-double is impressive, but he was slated to
I think okay, if we were to boil down Jokic's MVP, and I'm sorry I'm pausing a lot, guys. I just have a lot to say about this. I should have made my own video about it. But let's just go off of how I feel the breakdown of his season is. I feel like 10% of it will have to do with the narratives about last year. I feel like that's 10% of the reason why he's in the MVP conversation and the front runner. 40%, let's give 60% to the actual seating and where he's at and what he's done now that he has his teammates and has really proved people wrong. I feel like the proving people wrong in the seeding and in wins has shown a lot, because they're on track to win 55 games, where they were at 48, but at the same time they were a 6 seed. So I think the seeding matters to a lot of people. And then 30% I'm going to give to the triple-double. I think that is an important part. I don't think it's the biggest case, but I think it is like a secondary or a third case that you can make for somebody like him
to win even before he got to that triple-double mark a couple of weeks ago in the regular season. So I don't want to hear the triple-double being the reason why he's going to win. He won back-to-back in the past 2 years without even averaging a triple-double. So I don't think the triple-double is the big deciding factor for Nikola Jokic. But what I think a lot of people have an issue with when it comes to Nikola Jokic winning these MVPs is the lack of consistency when it comes to the player that they're going to pick to win this award. I mean, just think about it here. One season, Nikola Jokic wins as the 3rd seed, and they tell Joel Embiid, hey man, you just didn't play enough games. Even though your Sixers are the 1 seed, you missed a huge chunk of the season, and we can't just give it to you. And I thought that was fair. Availability is the best ability, so I have no problem with that whatsoever. But then the next year, Joel Embiid is still one of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference, and Nikola Jokic still wins the MVP as the 6th seed. And I
want to argue, not argue, I want to say that if you want to argue out of the 3 MVP cases that he's had, the second one is the weakest one because of how close everybody was, and on top of that, Joel Embiid played more games, and Giannis was looking great, and you had guys like that. You know what I'm saying? But I want to say, I want to put this out for you. I just feel, in my personal opinion, that, and I said this a little bit earlier in the video, I don't think Joel Embiid on the Nuggets in last year's team does any. I think they actually do worse than Jokic. I think they're a play-in team, maybe even worse with Joel Embiid. I just don't think I don't know. I just think that Jokic is a better team player. I think that he is not saying Joel Embiid isn't. I'm just saying Jokic is. If you're open, he will find you. He will find you, and the defenders won't even know it. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like he just makes his team so much better. And yeah, the advanced stats come to play there. And I just think, yeah, if he didn't have advanced stats, it'd probably be a different conversation, but I don't know.
I like Jokic, but I always thought that was a problem. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it, because at the end of the day, Jokic was putting up great numbers, and he was missing Jamal Murray and MP.
Oh, one more thing. People want to act like he shouldn't even be in the top 5 in MVP voting, or in the top 3. Whoever says that is really not watching the games, or really not understanding the value of Nikola Jokic, and that's okay. I'm not going to say that's not okay. You may have a different taste. That's perfectly fine. Everybody has to like whatever they like. But come on now. Jokic is definitely a top 2 or 3 candidate every single year, whether you hate him or whether you love him. I don't care what you say. If he's not in your top 3, I don't want to hear you talk about the MVP voting, because he definitely is, at least in my opinion. I don't think in any of those years he's not the runner-up. If you do give it to the other person, I think you have to give him the runner-up.
MPJ for most, if not all of the season. So him being able to avoid the play-in scenario and leading them to a 6th seed, it was still MVP caliber play. But considering that he was coming off of an MVP the previous season, Joel Embiid was the runner-up, and he's the runner-up in this scenario, and Jokic has now fallen to a 6th seed, I would expect at least some voter fatigue to affect Jokic enough to the point that Joel Embiid wins, but unfortunately, that's not what happened. And hell, even Giannis, who had a great season last year, by the way, you could argue his best regular season to date, he didn't come in 2nd place either. He was 3rd. Jokic would win the MVP over 2 guys that were top seeds in their conference and still playing relatively at the same level as Nikola Jokic. So I understand why a lot of people looked at the award last year and said, you're changing the criteria again. First, it was about health and games played. Now Joel Embiid has that, Giannis has that, and they're losing to the same guy as he is the 6th seed in the Western Conference. It just seems unfair. You're moving the goalpost every single time. Like now this year it's about, hey, Jokic is putting up.
Jokic is my guy, but I do feel like they moved the goalpost a little bit. I don't think it would have changed the results, to be honest with you. I feel like they would have probably been way closer, but I don't know. I just feel like the fact that voter fatigue did kind of affect it, because I feel like a lot of people were saying Joel Embiid to be the MVP. I think voter fatigue did hit. I just don't think it hit to what people thought it was going to be.
Better numbers than his MVP season the year prior. Well, no shit, he's doing that when he has more work to do on the team, with players like Jamal Murray and MPJ missing all of the season. It doesn't mean that Jokic can't put up great numbers even when they're playing. I mean, we're seeing it this season. He's putting up incredible numbers, but if his numbers improve from a season where he did have those guys on the team, well, no shit, his numbers are gonna look better when they're not there. I love Jokic, but I do understand why people were upset seeing how they changed the criteria for him last year. It doesn't mean he didn't have an MVP caliber season, but you can't keep moving the goalpost for players that you like. I mean, think about it. When he won the MVP in 2021, let's not forget that not only Joel Embiid was 2nd, but Steph Curry was 3rd. And what was the argument used against him? Well, not only did your team miss the playoffs, even though it's a regular season award, but they weren't even a top 7 seed. They were the 8th seed in the Western Conference.
But they missed the playoffs. And on top of that, I just think that Jokic's team, I don't want to say it was better, because I feel like the Warriors were actually a better team, but the wins with Jokic was way more than when the Warriors were playing. If I remember correctly, I don't even think they won. I think they won like 40 games. Jokic was almost at 50. That's the big difference here. I feel like we need to stop looking at the seeding at this point, because it's just always so close. You know what I'm saying? Especially this year, the West is literally 13 through 6 could be changed in a week. Completely different. I don't know.
You can effectively damn near remove someone from the MVP convo because of seeding. Why is this guy winning the conversation when he's the 6th seed? It just doesn't make sense. It's a lack of consistency there. And then that brings us to this season, where Nikola Jokic is on pace to win his 3rd straight MVP. And what's crazy is they are the #1 seed in the Western Conference. It shouldn't even be controversial that he's gonna win another MVP. But the problem is the media's voting and the lack of consistency. I mean, think about it. Steve Nash was on one of the top teams in the Western Conference in 2007 with the Suns. He had better numbers than his previous MVP.
But come on now, are we really going to compare Steve Nash's 17 point per game performances, right, to Jokic's 25 point per game triple doubles? I don't think so. I really don't like this argument to start off.
MVP seasons in 05 and 06, you could argue the best season of his career, especially at that point in his.
And that's also not saying that they just may have had a better season. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you really look at Dirk's numbers, because I think Dirk won the MVP that year, I think Dirk had a way better season. Not way better, but I think he had a better season, personally. I feel like it's the perception of who. It doesn't really matter Just because you have better stats doesn't mean that someone can't have better stats than you. I guess. I don't know. I don't remember what the Mavericks might have been a second or third seed. So I think you really could argue that. I think you could definitely argue that. I don't know. We'll see.
Career, and he still didn't win the MVP. He didn't even come close to winning the MVP because to them it's like, yo, we've given this guy back-to-back MVPs. We can't give him 3 straight. So instead of him winning, Dirk ended up winning.
And I also don't like that as well. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to keep interrupting this video. But that's another thing I really don't like is that just because someone doesn't do anything in the postseason, even though this is a regular season award, you want to discredit them for the season. Not discredit them, but say, you want to not give them an MVP award just because of what they couldn't do in the postseason. This is a regular season award. Be real. Be real, man. Because we got to start looking at it as a regular season award and not as, oh, Steve Nash didn't do this. Oh, Jokic didn't do this. Oh, Westbrook did. No, we need to stop looking at it like that. If you're really the best player in the regular season, it's a regular season award. Congratulations, you won the MVP. That's what that should be. And the finals MVP is for somebody that, and I don't know if that's a conversation for maybe they should have a playoffs MVP, and the only people that can't be in it are is the final MVP, finals MVP. Maybe they should have a separate award for that. I don't know, but I don't think you should discredit someone's regular season award for something they couldn't do in the postseason. I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
Winning the award, and rightfully so. His team was the 1 seed. Hell, you can look at Giannis when he won back-to-back MVPs. What did they say after he lost to the Heat? Oh, there's no way he's gonna win that MVP award next year. It doesn't matter what his numbers look like. He just won back-to-back MVP.
If someone has a freaking 40-point triple-double, I don't care what you say. They are the fucking MVP. Unless they are at the bottom of the conference with 30, 35 wins, and there was players with really good stats. I feel like if a guy is in the top seed and he is averaging a ridiculous amount and he is doing crazy, give him the MVP. It doesn't matter he didn't do well in the playoffs. It shouldn't matter.
MVPs, and he lost in the playoffs, going out hella sad against the Raptors blowing a 2-0 lead and against the Heat losing to a 5 seed in the bubble in 5 games. We don't care if this guy averages 50 and 30. We're not giving him the MVP until he actually gets it done in the playoffs. That was the narrative about Giannis at the time, and he went out there and had a great year in 2021 and in 2022 last year. Didn't win the MVP, didn't even finish as the runner-up for the award. And I honestly have no issue with that because it's been consistent with the past. We've seen numerous players from LeBron James to Michael Jordan win multiple MVPs, whether it's back-to-back or throughout a time period, and they just stop them and say, you know what, we can't give you any more because of voters fatigue. And unfortunately, neither of those unspoken rules that I just named apply to Jokic, unlike the other players of the past. Jokic has not even made it to the Western Conference Finals outside of a bubble dome in Orlando. In the MVP seasons he's had, he lost in the 2nd round to the Phoenix Suns, being swept and playing like shit on defense, getting cooked and abused by D-Book and Chris Paul like target practice. And then the next year in his 2nd MVP campaign, he was gentleman swept by the Golden State Warriors, putting up great offensive numbers, but defensively.
Are we noticing a pattern here though? Both of these teams went to the finals. Just like Giannis's team, both of those teams went to the finals. I think we're getting this a little misconstrued here because I think everybody knew there was no chance in hell the Denver Nuggets win in a 7-game series to the Golden State Warriors. There's only so much a guy can do for 7 straight games. I don't like that argument. And the one with the Phoenix Suns, Jamal Murray did go down. He did go down. So, and you got to think about it. All these other guys like Aaron Gordon and look at Aaron Gordon, Will Barton, and Michael Porter Jr.'s stats in these games. I dare you. Not saying he wasn't bad on defense in the 2021. He was. But really?
he was atrocious. I mean, we're talking about Jordan Poole getting a max contract on top of his head. And sure, you guys can say the playoffs should bear no impact on whoever's gonna win the MVP, but unfortunately, we've seen in the past, we saw Giannis when he lost to the Heat. They were basically saying, we're not giving him another MVP. You keep selling in the playoffs in your MVP seasons. How can we keep giving you the MVP? At the end of the day, recency bias does affect a lot of players. You can look at James Harden. You telling me that his playoff flameouts didn't affect how some of these media members looked at him, especially when it came to some of these MVP convos? But then with Jokic, it's a different story. And the same thing applies when it comes to voter fatigue. It seems like they have none of that when it comes to Jokic. I mean, LeBron won back-to-back MVPs and was on pace to win his third one, but they said, nah, let's give it to D-Rose because we can't give it to LeBron. He just joined the Miami Heat. It's too much voter fatigue as well. We just gave him back-to-back MVPs, even though he had better numbers and was just clearly the best player in basketball, even in that regular season. So when people say they have an issue with Jokic winning 3 straight MVPs because they changed the criteria for players that they do like, I agree. I completely agree with that. Even if you think Jokic should win the MVP, you can't lie to yourself and say that they don't move the goalposts for him. Now, I have to also bring up,
I don't think it's to the extent that you think it is, but yes, I do agree that they did move the goalposts for Joel Embiid, and I mean for Jokic and for Joel Embiid to win. I understand. I do think it was a little crazy on their part.
The issue of race. I've been hearing that a lot over the last couple of weeks. If Nikola Jokic was black, they wouldn't be doing this. And look, I will say this. If you really do think about it, a lot of these media members, for the most part, are white men that did not make the NBA, probably didn't even play basketball growing up, or they just weren't good enough. They probably see themselves in Nikola Jokic a lot more than other players. And sure, Jokic is 7 feet tall, but he does not really have the body type of an NBA player, especially earlier on in his career. He was fat and out of shape. And when you throw in the fact that his analytics are just off the charts, and a lot of these media guys just focus in on analytics like Raptor or Vorp, I can understand people saying there's special treatment given to Jokic because of his race. And I'm gonna be honest, as a black man myself, during Black History Month, I really don't think his race is that big of an issue here. Honestly, I don't. Jokic is still a very talented player and one of the 5 best players in the league, hands down, no matter what. He has to still play at a certain level to even be in consideration for this award. How are we just making this all about race? I don't know. At the end of the day, the problem is the voting. There's no set criteria for these awards, and it can always get muddied up depending on who is voting for the player. One media member may value just strictly stats, another media member may value strictly winning, another media member may value how impactful you are on both sides of the ball. And I think that's the true issue with this award. You just have different people that value different things, and with no real criteria, there's nothing stopping any media member from changing their criteria on a year-to-year basis, especially when it's certain players that they may not even like that they have to go up against.
But I don't think that has anything to do with like a criteria. I think no matter what, people will value things that other people won't, and then that's the same thing with like let's put Jokic and Tatum in the conversation right now. Both teams are in the 1 seed. Both teams are title contenders. Both players have a ton of things going on for them. So at the end of the day, it's still going to be about what these people value. It's not going to change the fact that if we're given a criteria, maybe it'll change a little bit, but I don't think it'll change. Like, a lot of my feelings on this is just, I don't think it'll change to the extent that you think it'll change. And the thing with race, okay, whoever's saying it's about race is absolutely crazy, because with Russell Westbrook's MVP, they were saying the same things that they were saying about Russell Westbrook with Nikola Jokic. They're saying the same things until Westbrook couldn't prove it anymore. You got to remember, Jokic is 28 years old. Russ is 32, 33. Russ has maybe one more shot, depending on how this goes, to win a ring and be a prominent role in it. Jokic has in his prime. That's another big difference here. He's in his prime. He's 28 years old. Maybe I think he might be 29, but I think he's 28. We're really gonna do that? I don't think so. I think that's a goofy take. The race thing is really goofy to me.
Let's be real here. You think a lot of these media members like the fact that Joel Embiid flops a lot, or they like his personality? They may not like him at all. Jokic is more likable to some of these guys and more
Of course he
relatable
is.
than a guy like Joel Embiid. I think if people really want
Joel Embiid is another person that I just never really liked. And it's not the fact that he's black, it's the fact that he is just he flop. The flopping's not even the biggest deal to me. It's more the fact that he thinks he deserves things over people that are just having just as good, if not better, seasons than him. For example, how much more can I do to win the MVP? I don't know. Start doing like Jokic won his MVP fairly, in my opinion. I feel like it just depended on what you valued more. So yeah, I mean, I understand the frustration, but at the same time, I've never heard somebody toot their own horn as much as Joel Embiid does. That's what I don't like about him. He's very talented, and I think he is the second best center in the league. I think he's a top 5 player in the NBA right now, but
to fix this, the NBA just needs to set down a real criteria for the MVP award. If not, these conversations are always going to happen and they're never going to stop. But you guys, let me know your opinions down below in the comment section. Do you think that Jokic is unfairly treated in the NBA, positively or negatively, from fans, media members?
Alright, so shout out Mustard for this video. I do want to say that I do understand where he's coming from, and he makes a lot of valid points. I don't think they're great points. I just think they're valid, and I think a lot of them can be, I don't know. I just think a lot of them can be picked apart and shown, hey, might not be the right answer. Not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that I think a lot of them will not work out to the extent he thinks they will. There's nothing wrong with that. It's obviously difference in opinions. I like Mustard's channel. I think he's a very entertaining guy, and he throws a lot of hard work in his videos. So I'll link him down in below. We'll link this video down below as well if you want to react to it yourself. Please like, share, and subscribe for more. I want to say thank you all for the support you guys have been showing me. It's been wonderful, and I hope to keep making videos for you guys. I would love to do this as something that I can actually do all the time, but we're not there yet, but we're moving steadily, and I hope we can keep it moving. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.